Hey everybody, and welcome into the season wrap-up edition of Billikens Beat. I'm Ben Frederickson, alongside Stu Durando as always. I'm still down here at Cardinals spring training. Stu's back in St. Louis, and unfortunately, Stu, the Billikens are done for the season. They got bounced in the first round of the NIT against Mississippi State. But also, some better news: the SLU women, they make it all the way to the NIT quarterfinals. So congratulations to Lisa Stone's team. And now we're kind of left to go, okay, what's next? Before we look at what the Billikens should look like next season, Stu, how do you grade this year for Travis Ford's team? This is a strange season to try to analyze. There was a lengthy shutdown, one of the longer we've seen in college basketball. Probably the Billikens were a tournament team without that. Impossible to say. And clearly the selection committee, it seemed like, didn't want to give them the benefit of the doubt there. What do you make of the Billikens? 14-7 at the end of the year. And we would have liked to see them a lot more.
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out how you analyze this season, like you said, how you judge it, because it just was so disrupted by the layoff. And yes, everybody had a layoff, but they were certainly affected by it. When they came back, besides all the stuff we know about them losing games they should have won and things along those lines, they really offensively were never the same team that they were in that first, 5-6 weeks of the season when they were scoring over 80 points a game and shooting lights out. It was kind of hard to imagine them continuing to average, 84, 85 points a game and shooting 52%, but they really dropped off dramatically when they returned. And that was combined with inconsistent defensive issues that they just didn't go good together. And they just never could get any kind of a rhythm going again. And that led to the ups and downs of the last, whatever it was, 6 weeks, 2 months of the season. So, if you were going to grade the season, you almost have to kind of give it a C, as in average, because, so much more was expected. And we don't really know the reasons as to why they didn't get to that point. It could have been COVID. It could have been other reasons, but it just didn't quite get to the level that everyone had hyped in the preseason.
Yeah, it kind of felt like an incomplete grade. That's the only one I could come up with is you return it back and say this there's not enough to work with here, and that's tough because this team was it had all the makings of a team that could have made a special run if it had gotten into the tournament. Now we won't know, but I wanted to ask the future of Jordan Goodwin, Hasahn French. It sure sounds like they're gonna head out and pursue their professional careers wherever those may be. They haven't given any signs they're coming back. Every college player this year, because of the pandemic, has an option to return next season. Certainly, Billikens fans would love to have those guys who become such faces of the program back, but it doesn't sound like they think they have much left to accomplish in the college game. To which you can kind of understand, those would be two big departures for this team. What do you think happens with those guys?
Yeah, the door is definitely still open in case there was a change of heart, but they both expressed that they did not plan to return. And after the game against Mississippi State in the NIT, didn't do anything at all to change people's thoughts on that when they talked about never wearing the jersey again. So as of that moment, it seemed their intent was to move on with the next part of their careers or their lives and see what happens. So that leaves 2 spots to fill. And 2 giant spots to fill. You've got a transfer who's been waiting to play, and Francis Okoro, who can step in for Hasahn, and hopefully, Travis Ford's hoping that he can, fill in all those numbers that Hasahn has provided. That leaves a huge gap left by Jordan Goodwin, who's top 10 in almost everything career-wise at SLU. And those are really big shoes to fill when you got a guy who rebounded, scored, and played defense, ran the offense at times, and everything else that you can possibly do.
They're going to miss Jordan Goodwin's leadership. They're going to miss that duo. Those guys have done a lot to building this program to where it is under Coach Ford, and I know that he will point to them as really important players in his program. Good news for the Billikens, though. Javonte Perkins said earlier in the season, hey, I'm back next year. He's coming back, and that's great news to have a scorer of his ability. You mentioned Francis Okoro. Barring transfer craziness, which every team is, there's a good chance every team is going to be affected by in some degree. There's over more than 100 transfers in the portal right now, I think. barring that, Yuri Collins should be back, Fred Thatch, Gibson Jimerson. You've got 3 big guys in Bell Jr., Linson, Hargrove. There's still a group here that has had some experience that I would imagine Travis will try to be scouring that transfer market as well. But they've got a pretty good group here coming back next season, despite losing some of their best players.
Yeah, they've got their eye on that transfer portal, which is just overflowing right now. And there'll be people, I'm sure. I would find it hard to believe that they wouldn't bring in at least one transfer who can help right away. But yeah, there's guys in backup roles or smaller roles this year that are just waiting to bust out. We maybe expected a little more from Gibson Jimerson this season, but he was, he had some really good moments, especially before, again, the COVID layoff. And, this is a guy who's an elite shooter potentially. Terrence Hargrove, we all know that, great athlete. He's turned into a pretty good shooter. And if he can work his way into a good defensive player, he could have a major impact. Fred Thatch, these are guys that can be really high level players. And now we're going to be expected to take on larger roles going forward with the losses of French and Goodwin. So they've definitely got a lot of good pieces that are going to keep them, in the, at least maybe the upper half, if not toward the top of the A10 potentially, if they can get other pieces to fill in the holes.
Yeah, I bet Travis comes up with some transfer magic. He's had Okoro. He got Perkins as a transfer, a guy who wanted to come back home. He's made SLU a place where I think guys who come out of St. Louis maybe look at going back to if they want to play for their home city. So we'll see what he comes up with, and that might be our next Billikens Beat. Stu is breaking down the next Billikens transfer edition that Ford comes up with. And that's kind of how we'll do these now moving forward. As news demands, we'll roll these out, and we'll probably have some, I would imagine, as Travis reshapes this roster a little bit. Stu, good work all season, man. I know you'll continue to cover the team, and folks can find all that at stltoday.com. We'll be back with a new edition of Billikens Beat whenever the Billikens give us something to talk about. I bet it won't be too long here.
Probably not.
Good work all season, Stu. We'll catch up with you soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, Ben.